everybody to our next interview in our interview series was our Spokane County endorsed candidates. We've got Hunter Abell with us this morning, who's running for the 7th Legislative District representative position. So Hunter, thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning, MJ. Thanks for having me be here.
You betcha. So Hunter, tell us about yourself, your background, and why you are running.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, good morning. Thanks again for letting me be here. My name is Hunter Abell. I'm running for the 7th Legislative District, position number 2. This is the seat that is being vacated by Joel Kretz, who has served ably in the legislature for many years. He's going to go be a full-time grandpa and raise horses. And of course, none of us will blame him or criticize him for that, although we are sorry to see him go. My background is that my family has 4 generations here in the 7th District. We're up here in rural Ferry County in the Inchelium area, which is located on the Colville Indian Reservation. We have a family tree farm, which is where I'm speaking to you today. So you may hear some equipment in the background. You might hear some noises. That's just kind of the way it works around here. My background is that I was born here in the 7th in Colville, and I was raised in Inchelium. I went K through 12 at Inchelium, so go Hornets. And then I returned back to Inchelium a few years ago and have been here. I've been involved in the local party as a PCO, and I was vice chair of our Republican Party. For a time, I was our Ferry County District Court judge, which I'm going to talk about my legal background here in a minute. And now I'm again a PCO. After I finished up school at Inchelium, I went off to undergraduate school, and I was at undergraduate school when 9/11 happened. And so my life took a dramatic turn. I enlisted in the U.S. Navy 18 months after 9/11. I did almost 5 years of active duty and about 15 years of reserve service. I deployed to Iraq in 2007, 2008, and to Guantanamo Bay in 2014, 2015. And I recently went over 20 good years in the Navy. So that's something that we're proud about, something that has a sense of accomplishment attached to it. I'm currently a commander in the United States Navy Reserve, and I drill frequently there in Spokane at the Reserve Center down on Assembly Street. In addition to my service in the Navy, my professional background is that I am an attorney. I was a prosecutor for the Navy, and as I mentioned before, I was our district court judge up here in Republic for a while. And then lastly, I'm involved in the ownership and the running of our family ranch. This is called Long Rifle Ranch. It's very important to us. It's home for my parents. And I've got 2 beautiful little girls, ages 9 and 11. They are central to my life. That's a little bit about, who I am. Why I'm running is a number of things. So I am concerned about the violence and the crime associated with the fentanyl issue that we've got throughout our state and certainly in our district. I'm also very concerned about protecting and defending our rural 7th District way of life. People live out here in Inchelium or Colville or Omak or Twist because they want to live out in this area. This is something that is special to them, and they want to preserve what makes this area special. So key to that is protecting property rights, which I have some significant experience with, as well as drawing good paying jobs to the district. And lastly, standing up in defense of our Second Amendment rights, the right to keep and bear arms, which are protected both under the U.S. Constitution and under the Washington State Constitution. So that's a little bit about why I'm running. That's a little bit about my background. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my faith is centrally important to my life. I'm a Christian. It defines how I'm going about running in this campaign. And if I'm fortunate enough to be elected in office, how I would go about my service.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for your service, Hunter, as well. We so appreciate all of our brave military that have served and, have sacrificed so much in their families to help us to stay a free nation. So
it's definitely a family obligation. Thank you very much, MJ.
Yeah. So Hunter, talk to our voters about why citizens should vote for you over your opponents in this race.
Yeah, so first of all, MJ, I think we've got some great candidates running in this race. I think there are some background experiences that I have that set me apart. And I'd like to walk through some of those. So the first is that I'm a business owner. So as I mentioned, I'm an attorney. I'm a partner at the Spokane office of Williams Kastner. We've got offices in Spokane, Seattle, and Portland. And we established the Spokane office relatively recently after a number of years of myself and others arguing that the inland Northwest is really a dynamic area. There is growth taking place there. There's lots of good work to take being done there. And so I'm very proud of the fact that we have created jobs here in the 7th. There are individuals in my office who live in Deer Park. And so that's something that we're proud of. But what that means for me is that I deal with the same challenges that every small business owner or any business owner, period, in 7th District deals with, which is having to deal with all the regulations and the administrative red tape that comes out of Olympia that makes it more difficult for us to do our jobs and to run our businesses, make sure we pay the employees. We've got the ongoing difficulty with finding individuals who are able to do the work and stay in the work. That finding and retaining of good quality talent is always a challenge. And then if there's a profit left over after all the overhead has been paid, then that's what we get. So that gives me an entrepreneurial background, which I think is very important. And frankly, we want more individuals with entrepreneurial backgrounds in the legislature and private sector experience in the legislature. I also mentioned before that I'm an attorney, and I really enjoy being an attorney. They say it's where history and politics meet is the law. And not only am I an attorney, I'm a constitutionally conservative attorney. And over the years, we've had a significant decrease in the number of constitutionally conservative lawyer legislators in our Washington State Supreme Court. And we're seeing it happen again this year. Senator Patton, unfortunately, is retiring. I wish he weren't. Senator Oban has long since retired. Representative Stokesbury can't do it all on his own. We need attorneys with constitutionally conservative backgrounds, able and willing to stand up and fight in the legislature for our rights. I take our constitutions very seriously, our Washington State Constitution and our U.S. Federal Constitution. And those are documents that I've had the pleasure and professional experience of studying and arguing what they mean. And then lastly, the military experience is really important. So the military, as you know, gives you unique leadership opportunities early on. I've deployed a couple of times, once to a combat zone. I've had the honor and the privilege of leading both enlisted and officers alike on those deployments. And the military teaches you things like servant leadership, focusing on the mission, and making sure that we're carrying out the mission in a no drama fashion. And that's what we want in the legislature, and that's what I'm committed to doing. So I think that private sector background, that experience as being a constitutionally conservative attorney, and that experience in the military are three things that really distinguish me from the other candidates in the race.
Fabulous, fabulous. Okay, so this is, I think when we watch Congress a lot, people see Congress kind of voting a way that they don't feel really represents their values. So this seems to be a issue that is on a lot of people's minds right now. Given the pervasiveness of money and lobbyists in government, along with the strong presence of special interest groups, how do you intend to effectively navigate and combat these pressures to genuinely represent and stand up for the interests of the citizens in the 7th Legislative District? Basically, we know there's a lot of pressures to go along to get along. And unfortunately, then the people's, representation isn't always honored or valued.
Yeah, there's a few things that immediately come to mind. One is that I mentioned before that my Christian faith is very important to me. That will help me as I go about trying to do something which is difficult. And that's always been the case before. If I'm doing something difficult, I pray for strength and I pray for guidance. And service in the legislature is difficult. It's hard. There's a lot of forces and pressures that are associated with, but it's important that you remain true to yourself and true to the oath that you took. And so that would be part of my ongoing regular prayer, that I would be able to do that. Secondly, the military is very helpful for you in learning how to take a position and defend it, right? Just know that this is the hill you're going to fight on. Others may or may not agree with you, but it gives you a pretty thick skin and it gives you the ability to withstand a lot of those pressures. The third thing is I live right here in the middle of the 7th Legislative District, here in Ferry County, the geographic middle. And I think that is very helpful for me. It gives me easy access to all parts of the district, which means that I'm going to be in ongoing communication with all parts of the district. This district, as I think you know, is dynamic and active. They are used to seeing their legislators on a regular basis. And so I know that one of the biggest assets I would have in serving in Olympia would be the feedback and the support and the guidance from voters here in the 7th District, basically the people who sent me here. So I think between my faith background, my experience and leadership background in the military, and then an ongoing commitment to listening to the voters that sent me there, will be three ways that I'm able to withstand kind of the adverse negative pressures of Olympia.
Nice, nice. And, Hunter, the 7th legislative district is quite unique and vast. So
Yep.
give a couple seconds for our voters to help understand how big it is and the area that it encompasses. Because I didn't realize how big it was. So
Yeah, the seventh district is huge. It's exactly the way we like it. It's sparsely populated. It is rural. It's a lot of farms and ranches. It's roughly a quarter of the state by geography. So it is very, very large. And again, just to remind folks who are listening, this is for a legislative seat. This is to go to Olympia. This is not to go to Washington, D.C. This is to go to Olympia to help make laws, for our state. So it is very, very large. I have coined the nickname the Fighting Seventh for the seventh district, and that is because the people who live here are pretty ornery. They are prepared to fight for our values, they're prepared to fight for our vision of the state, they're prepared to fight against really the negative vision of the state, or the vision that is at least contrary to our values that we often get from across the mountains. So I think it's an appropriate nickname, but it includes all of Pend Oreille County, Stevens County, Ferry County, Okanogan County, most of Douglas County, part of Spokane County, that Deer Park area, and then a tiny strip of Chelan County. So this is really large. And I think, again, the fact that I live right in the geographic center is going to be very helpful for me if I'm honored enough to be elected into this position.
good. Yes. I think that, like I said, I think that's important for people to understand how broad the 7th district stretches across, the northeast part of our state. So very helpful. This is also another issue that's on people's minds because of what happened the last 4 years, given the challenges and controversies surrounding COVID-19 mandates. What specific steps would you advocate for at the state level to balance public health interests with individual liberties? And how would you work to prevent the overreaching use of mandates for measures such as masking and vaccinations in future public health crises?
Yeah, great question. So one of the initial things that we need to do is we need to get a conservative Republican in the governor's mansion, somebody who understands and respects the limits of executive power. That would be an important way to help protect our rights going forward. But even in the absence of that, there are certain things we can do with a little bit of background. So I mentioned before that I take our constitutions, our Washington State Constitution and our US Constitution seriously. So when the COVID situation was happening, and I saw a large number of religious exemption requests being made and routinely denied at the state level, that really concerned me. And it concerned me as a constitutionally conservative attorney, but it also really concerned me about the practical policy impacts. I mean, we had long-serving, outstanding, decorated members of, for example, our state patrol, who were just let go after outstanding careers. The state patrol was particularly hard hit, and I don't think we should be surprised, a couple of years later, that we've got these downstream effects related to law and order. We know that, again, that process of attracting and retaining talent is always a challenge. But we've got that especially right now in law enforcement here in Washington, where law enforcement's getting kicked repeatedly, unfortunately, by a lot of folks who have different values than what we do. So I do believe that the way that the religious exemption requests were reviewed was not fair. I think in many ways it was essentially a sham process where the sincerely held religious beliefs of the state employee were given little credence, resulting in significant damage to the individual's career and frequently termination. Now, as many people know, that has led to court challenges, in some cases to state employees being reinstated. So there is recognition, by the judicial system that this was not correct, the way that these exemption requests were processed. So that's a little bit of the background and a little bit of the concerns. The things that we can do specifically going forward, the legislature must be much more forward-leaning in guarding the governor's use of emergency authority. Unfortunately, the legislature in this case, and I think like a lot of society, they were prepared to give some deference to the governor early in the days of this situation. But as time went on, it became clear that the emergency was no longer what it was initially presented as, and that the mandate was being applied in an uneven manner that seemed to play favorites. And so that was a real concern that a lot of people saw. something that I saw. So legislature must be much more forward-leaning in defense of individual liberties, even in the face of an argued an emergency like what we had here.
Yes, we definitely need changes to those emergency powers that were granted by our legislature. And you're right, the picker, where you got to pick winners and losers. The big box stores were fine. The little mom and pop stores were not fine, but fined, charged with these fees. And we saw businesses, here in Spokane, mom and pop stores go under because of it. And and to never, resurface. So I think that is really pressing. And, we're getting like percolations of news of potential something else coming. And we just can't go down that road again. The unconstitutional freedoms that were stripped away during that because of emergency was abysmal.
Yeah, and one other thing on that subject, the fact that churches were shuttered
Oh,
for a very long period of time, is extremely disconcerting for me. Again, not only as a believer, but also as a constitutionally conservative attorney. It was extremely problematic and worrisome that churches are forced to close their doors, whereas other entities are allowed to continue on. That's a real problem. Again, if we take our Constitution seriously, which I do.
absolutely. Yes. So, Hunter, how do you plan to address the most pressing issues or some other pressing issues facing our constituents, such as illegal immigration, cost of living, inflation, taxes, crime, and education?
Yeah, a bunch of items there. So, illegal immigration, typically we think of that as more of a southern border item, but we are a northern border district. The legislative district, the seventh legislative district has a long northern border there with Canada. Unfortunately, the seventh legislative district is a hub for fentanyl trafficking. There's also human trafficking that takes place throughout the seventh. We need to ensure that our drug task forces are fully funded, equipped, and trained in order to deal with this challenge that we've got with fentanyl. And I think a lot of people may be under a misunderstanding of the current challenge of fentanyl. A lot of this is driven by the cartels. So there is, in effect, a paramilitary force that is involved in the fentanyl trafficking throughout this district. So that's different from the drug challenges that we have had, at least in this area in the past. And I think we need to take steps that recognize that difference. And our drug task forces are the way to do it. They've got a proven track record, but their funding is under threat. And so that's something the legislature needs to deal with proactively in order to get a handle on that. Education is a vital responsibility of the legislature. Like a lot of people, I have concerns with how McCleary unfolded. Again, it's a constitutional matter a number of years ago, but our public schools are vital responsibilities of the legislature. I do have concerns with a lot of the content that is being pushed on the local school districts from OSPI. I think that's a real significant problem. And so I believe that actually a change in the OSPI would be very helpful with regard to that. But the infrastructure and the content was being taught at our public schools is a vitally important function of the legislature. Taxes are too high here in the state of Washington. We don't have an income tax, although there are people who desperately want to impose an income tax on the people of the state of Washington. The lack of an income tax is actually a force multiplier for us as far as economic growth and development. It's something that really attracts retirees to want to stay here in Washington. I saw that a lot with the military, where I would have military members talk about where they'd want to retire. And frequently they would say they want to go to Washington State for two reasons. Number one, no income tax. Number two, it's incredibly beautiful. We live in an incredibly beautiful state. There's a reason people want to be here and spend their retirement here. But we cannot, kill the goose that lays the golden eggs and impose an income tax on the people of the state of Washington, especially because the existing taxes are so high. Now, the gasoline tax is one of the highest in the country, and it really disproportionately impacts those of us who live in a rural area. So MJ, right now I'm speaking to you from Inchelium. If I've got a doctor's appointment in Spokane, which I frequently do, it's 100 miles
Yeah.
one way. So I'll be going to Spokane later today. It's 2 hours. It'll be 2 hours back. And so for those of us who live in rural areas, this gas tax really has a significant impact day in, day out, year in, year out. And it makes it more difficult for us to live in the area of the state where we want to live. So those three items, with regard to illegal immigration, which I kind of think in our district as being a fentanyl and a human trafficking challenge, education, and with regard to taxes, those are three areas that I take seriously and that I would want to apply an appropriately conservative view on if I were able to get to Olympia.
Yes, for sure. Final comments to our voters, Hunter.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks again, MJ, for the willingness to do this. Final comments to voters. So I've had a chance now to meet many of you. So I've been campaigning hard for a number of months now. Many of you have met my daughters, Libby and Winnie, who come with me to quite a few campaign events. They have had a lot of fun going out there and learning how our American political system works. It's kind of like front row seats in a class on American politics. So that's been great for them. Um, I just want to say that it has been a tremendous honor to meet the voters that I've had a chance to interact with. I would ask that you look at all of the candidates. Please go ahead and take a look at my campaign website, which is www.voteabell.com. That's vote, V-O-T-E, Abell. A is in Alpha, B is in Bravo, E is in Echo, L is in Lima, L is in Lima.com. And you'll see a little bit more information about the endorsements that I have, as well as the platform that I have. And I would be honored to have your vote. The ballots go in the mail later this week. So please vote. Make sure you vote. Make sure your family members vote. Make sure your neighbors vote. And I would be honored if you would consider voting for me for the state legislature, 7th Legislative District, position number 2.
Yes, fabulous. And thank you for reminding our voters about how important it is to vote in the primary. A lot of people don't understand you only get to vote for the top 2 in the general, right? And so this is your time to vote for your preferred candidate to ensure you get to vote for them in the general. It's I know it's August and July and people are wanting to be in summer mode and play in the beautiful water, ways that we have around this area, but please make sure to vote. So Hunter, thank you again for spending time with us this morning. And thank you for running and for serving the people. And we wish you the best of luck.
MJ, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Take care.
Thank you. You too.